So I'm here this morning to talk to you briefly about the Standard Study Group, and when Carlos says these are new committees, this truly is a new committee. I think we've met once, and that was about 3 months ago. So we're just really getting underway. And let me talk to you a little bit about the charge of this committee and kind of what we have in mind. This question in the Standard Study Group is really about the role of state boards and the role of NASBA in the standard setting process. The issues that we're taking on, or that we'll be taking on in our committee, is what recommendations our committee might provide to both the NASBA board regarding NASBA's strategy and NASBA's position with respect to setting accounting standards, and not just accounting standards, ethics standards, accountancy standards, for private entities. Clearly, the public entity space is well defined by the PCAOB, the FASB, the FCC, and at the end of the day, we have concerns about licensees that work for both public companies and private companies, but the private company standard setting has really been the focus of this study group. The issue is also about to address various Board of Accountancy options, your options, in terms of how we address the breadth and depth of your involvement in the standard setting process. Let me talk a little bit about first who we are as a group. Galen Hansen is chairing this one. Donnie, Walter Davenport, myself, Harry Parsons, Lori Tisch, a great group of colleagues, and I'm really looking forward to our upcoming discussions. The issue when we think about private entity standard setting, I think it was raised, a lot of questions were put on our radar screen with the FRF for SMEs, and I think we perhaps got additional clarity on Monday when we listened to Billy and we listened to Chuck Landis as we're thinking about this as state boards. But I guess the question that we have that I've heard asked several times is what constitutes authoritative standards? And then if the FRF for SMEs is a non-authoritative standard, what's the role of non-authoritative standards and in our enforcement and what should we be recommending to our licensees, and how do we protect the public? If I asked how the FASB looks at authoritative standards, I think the FASB would probably answer, if it's in the ASC, it's authoritative. Now, recently, I've asked various members of state boards, and I've asked licensees, so is cash basis accounting authoritative? I probably have had a 60 to 65% yes. If I've asked the FASB, I think the answer is cash basis accounting is not authoritative. It's not addressed in the ASC, and that would be, again, part of that non-authoritative part of our standards. And the question that we have to wrestle with as state boards, and this is the issue that our licensees are going to wrestle with, is what is the role of authoritative versus non-authoritative standards in our practice, and how do those standards help us better serve the public? If I ask the question, how does the AICPA look at authoritative standards, I'm probably going to answer it a little different. It's going to have more breadth in terms of how the AICPA looks at authoritative standards. Because if I'm answering that as a member of the AICPA, I'm probably saying, let's go to the Code of Professional Conduct, let's look at Appendix A, and back there we're going to see a list of bodies that have been recognized by AICPA Council as having the authority to promulgate standards. When I think about the breadth of what we do at state levels, there's probably a variety of things that we may do part in statute or part in rule where we recognize various standard setting bodies to give advice to our licensees. So at the end of the day, we're trying to wrestle with, is there a role for state boards in determining what represents authoritative standards that licensees should follow? And what's the role of state boards in providing guidance to our licensees on the role of non-authoritative standards? So ultimately, this is a question, and I think one of the reasons I think this is important today is we're at very early stages, and we're really looking to seek your input on these issues. And I guess if I'm asking for input, I'm asking for input on how are you wrestling with these questions, and how do we help you out? If I ask today, where are you most active in standard setting? I'm guessing many of you may say, no, we're not active in standard setting. Somebody else sets the standards, we enforce them, right? And for the most part, I think I'd agree with that, with one exception. There is an area where I would guess that every state is pretty active in the standard setting process, not active regularly. But if I look at, and I've looked at a variety of state rules, almost all of you have your own individual code of professional conduct in state rule. And those code of professional conducts, while similar, they vary from state to state. And at some point in time, you put those into your state rule. And there's a variety of places where either in rule or statute, you refer to other standards. But you have been active, particularly in the ethics arena, in setting professional standards. At this stage, I'm going to tell you, we've got more questions than we have answers. I would hope, and this is my own personal view, that I would hope by the time we get to the regional meetings, we'd have not only questions, but we have suggestions and maybe some really thoughtful questions and some possibilities that we want to get your feedback on in terms of what's our role as state boards. We clearly have a role in protecting the public interest. And while that role is a responsibility for public entities with the PCAOB, with the SEC and the FASB, we do have a role in thinking about professional standards, how we recognize professional standards, and how do we give our best guidance to licensees so that licensees respect the public interest. Those are the questions we're dealing with. We don't have answers. We're looking for your input. We're looking for your questions so we best serve you as we go forward. Thank you very much.